Bring back those jobs. I'm Fajzullin. Let's do business. Here's a bit of poetry for you first up. 'Twas on Lake Erie's broad expanse, one bright midsummer day, the gallant steamer Ocean Queen swept proudly on her way. The American poet Horatio Alger in 1866. That ocean steamer could have gone all the way from Detroit to Buffalo and up St. Lawrence Seaway to the Atlantic. It was that connection to the open sea that made the shores of Lake Erie one of the epicenters of America's industrialization. Car makers, steel mills, and General Electric made the area a focal point of a new era. Cities like Detroit, Toledo, and Erie became boom towns. But as time passed, the companies left for cheaper shores and took the jobs with them. Today, unemployment is sky high. So like many others, voters in Lake Erie County turned to Donald Trump. He promised to bring back the jobs. Now they hope he can.
The stars and stripes are flying high, a rare spot of color in the sky over Erie, Pennsylvania. Life is mostly gray here, decrepit buildings, factories boarded up. Many have left the city. Those who stayed are fearing for their jobs. Many of them work for GE, or they used to. Lots of jobs were lost, and the company has recently announced it would lay off another 1,600 workers, more than a third of its current workforce. Chris Phillips lost his job at the local transportation factory 1 year ago. A Democrat for most of his life, Phillips voted for Donald Trump.
Yes, I can truly say that the manufacturing policies of him saying he's going to bring jobs back resonates very much so with not only Erie County, but the majority of this country.
People here hope the new president will help them keep jobs in the area and bring back higher wages too. They've been fighting for that for years.
You know, when you talk to a General Electric or you negotiate with a General Electric, they tell you you make too much money. They constantly want to beat back your wages for you to keep your job. We can't keep going down the road of creating $12 and $15 an hour jobs.
Critics doubt that political pressure will bring the intended results.
It could be counterproductive in the sense that businesses will begin to think that if they expand and grow here, they won't have the opportunity to move if they need to. They'll be browbeaten into staying, and that raises their cost of doing business. So I just don't think that's a winning long-term strategy.
For Chris Phillips, long-term strategy is a long word. He cares about a job and a paycheck, and he's banking on Trump.
Self-driving cars are stealing the spotlight at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Hyundai's Ioniq is the South Korean car maker's offering. A little less jazzy on the outside, the focus shifting to the inside. Though some manufacturers can't keep away from those tacky interpretations of tomorrow.
What's interesting about this car isn't its futuristic design or electric motors, but its digital assistant. It's called Yui and talks to the driver. Don't bother looking for buttons or switches on the dashboard. Everything is controlled by voice, from the destination to the lighting to the music and temperature.
Now we're seeing more about what's going to happen inside the car. We're seeing more demonstrations from BMW and from Toyota, rethinking what the interior is going to look like. Because now if you're not driving your car, then you can ultimately have maybe more fun in your car, you can be more productive.
This is not a streaker being escorted out of the trade fair. He's actually promoting radiation-resistant underwear, and for a good reason.
Well, there are more and more studies coming out saying that men who keep phones in their pockets experience a strong decrease in fertility. So the Cleveland Clinic, for instance, issued a study saying that for men keeping their phones for more than 4 hours per day in their pockets, they experience a 50% reduction in sperm count, which is huge.
The latest robot from LG is like having a butler in the house. It responds to speech and controls the technical devices at home, such as vacuum cleaners, window blinds, and the coffee machine. And it also plays music.
We've been waiting for the ability to interact with our homes since the 1950s. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to talk to my house and wish for things.
But the wishes of today's children are also being granted. For example, this shoe has no laces, and it can be closed with an app. Welcome, brave new world.
Some of the biggest gains on record. The Chinese yuan soared against the US dollar on Thursday as China made efforts to stem capital outflows. The offshore yuan gaining almost 1% against the dollar, reaching a 2-month high. Chinese policymakers had recently stepped in to shore up the yuan. There was speculation Beijing wants a firm grip on the currency ahead of US President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration on January the 20th. The yuan was also helped by strong data from China's services sector. And let's go over to Konrad Busen, our financial correspondent, who's tracking this one for us from Frankfurt. Can you explain the gist of this very complicated story and why markets are in such a spin over the yuan surge against the US dollar?
Ben, what's important to note at first is that there's been enormous capital outflows out of China since 2014. Last year alone, an estimated amount of 50 to 100 billion US dollars was flowing out of China to be invested abroad in corporate investments, but also many rich Chinese bought property in countries other than China. That's a big problem for the Chinese government because China needs its currency reserves in order to be able to stabilize its currency, the yuan. And that's why the government in Beijing has introduced new rules at the beginning of this year bound to limit capital outflows, and those seem to work for the moment.
For the background, remind our viewers what happened exactly this time last year in China that's unnerved investors ever since then and has moved the government into the place it's in, cornered the government in a way, I guess, to try to shore up the market.
Well, exactly 1 year ago, share prices plunged all over the world, and they started to plunge in China. On the mainland, the stocks were sold in great amounts. Investors worldwide had been nervous whether or not the country would be able to meet its economic growth targets. And before all this, share prices in Shanghai and Shenzhen, the share markets there, had been terribly overpriced. That's why the sales happened, and they triggered, share price sales all over the world. The German DAX here last year, during the first 6 weeks of 2016, lost around about 20%. That's, of course, on everybody's minds now.
And these latest developments, are they set to spark an even greater outflow of capital from China? Can you gauge that at the moment?
Well, that's what people here are nervous about. They are nervous whether or not those restrictions that the government has put into place will work, or whether they have limits. And paradoxically, the government in Beijing itself contributes to these outflows. Beijing wants Chinese corporations to go abroad, invest money, invest in, technology here in Europe, also in the US. So it's uncertain whether or not this is going to work.
And just briefly, we all thought dollar parity with the euro was just around the corner. Is that not going to happen now?
Well, it's still in sight, I would say. A lot of this had to do with expectations in the new administration in the United States. The Trump speculation had pushed the dollar. Now Mr. Trump has to deliver, and we have to wait and see what the impact will be on the currency.
Okay, we'll see, and we'll see if that Trump rally has come to an end or not. Konrad Busen for us in Frankfurt. Deutsche Bank's agreed to pay their US $95 million to resolve a civil lawsuit. Germany's biggest lender was accused of using a web of shell companies to evade taxes. Prosecutors say the bank admitted guilt as part of the settlement. Deutsche says it's pleased to have resolved the claim. Last month, it agreed to pay $7.2 billion to settle another probe in America. Now, if you've ever driven through Germany, you would have seen the huge wind turbines peppered across the countryside. But I bet you haven't seen anything like this. In the past 4 weeks, 4 of these giants have either come tumbling down or the rotary blades have broken. So how safe are they?
The wind is still blowing, but this turbine is out of commission. The rotor blade is damaged, and nobody knows what happened. This is no isolated incident. Just this week near Hamburg, a turbine that had received regular maintenance completely fell apart. Cause unknown. In mid-December, this turbine in eastern Germany collapsed after a broken part apparently caused harmful vibrations. Was the wind too strong or the turbines too old? So far, no one has any answers. We're conducting a thorough investigation to find out which part caused the problem and what conclusions we can draw from this. The information we gather will help to improve service and maintenance operations in the future. There are more than 26,000 wind turbines in Germany. Industry sources say that each year, 1 or 2 accidents happen on average. It's bad for our image because everybody sees wind turbines, and when there's damage, it's pretty spectacular, and it grabs everyone's attention. Despite all the accidents, no one has been injured so far. To keep it that way, the industry wants to make sure wind farms remain a safe and stable part of the landscape.
They are spectacular. Their fall even more so. I hope they get to the bottom of it, and quickly. Nice doing business with you. Don't forget to check us out online or on Twitter. @Ben Fajzullin is my handle. Have a good one.